why Gypsy Rose Blanchard doesn't have custody of her baby.
Look at this. Look at her pushing that baby's head. Is there anything healthy about this?
I wish I could hit somebody with this bat, especially if I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Just a joke.
While Ryan didn't name names, I can only assume he is talking about Ken. I mean, who else would he be talking about? Certainly not Gypsy. But in true Ryan fashion, he said he was just joking because after he makes an insult, he always says, it's just a joke.
In my last video, I told you guys I had a tip that CPS was definitely involved. This is shocking behavior. So in this video clip, you can just see the way that she's holding the baby. She's bouncing the baby's head and seemingly blowing in her face or her nose. When I saw this, I was just immediately concerned. Also in the video, she says to the baby, "You belong to me." I mean, I can't even see it saying that in a loving way. Oh, you belong to me. I mean, it's...
Everybody, so I've got some big news. I was never medically abused by my mom. My medical records and constant contradictions prove that. I only get attention and views because I'm a freak show that killed their own mother. I hate Nina because I can never be as flawless as her. And I'm a closeted racist. Anyone with a brain can look into my case files and see that I'm a psychopath. I completely shit on real victims of abuse and SA on a daily basis with my lies. But I'm making bank. The only D that's ever been fire is my Colgate electric toothbrush. Ken seems to really like it too.
Why are you gay?
Mainstream media is my puppet, and you're all my biz. Be sure to watch my new episode tonight of me being an absolute menace to society who has no business walking freely amongst you. Oh, and one more thing. My boyfriend Ken does have freakishly skinny legs.
Skinny legs, skinny legs. Ken Urker has skinny legs.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard's story lately has been filled with shocking twists, with some even alleging that she has lost custody of her baby Aurora. But now, her own words are adding a new layer of controversy, as she publicly speaks out about her health condition and her mother Dee Dee's alleged medical fraud. Contradictions in her statements are making people question the reliability of her narrative. So, is Gypsy finally setting the record straight? Or is she accidentally unraveling her own case? One of Gypsy's main goals has been to educate the public about her rare genetic disorder, the 1Q21, one microdeletion syndrome, while proving that Dee Dee exaggerated or completely fabricated her medical history. But in the process of exposing her mother's deception, Gypsy has also exposed herself to a wave of skepticism. Critics are pointing out inconsistencies in how she describes her own health, raising doubts about whether all the pieces of her story truly align. For example, in one of her videos, Gypsy acknowledges that she does have the disorder and lists symptoms like microcephaly, which causes an abnormally small head, and muscular dystrophy, which leads to muscle weakness or loss of muscle mass. However, skeptics argue that these admissions conflict with her previous claims that many of her health conditions were entirely made up by Dee Dee. The blurred line between what was real and what was exaggerated has left some people questioning whether Gypsy's narrative is as airtight as she wants it to be. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss watching this video, so stick around until the end because this story is about to take some wild turns. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. You won't want to miss a single update on this unfolding drama. Let's dive in.
Gypsy Rose recently made a video explaining her microdeletion. I just wanted to touch on a couple of the things that were said and compare them to the evidence, the facts, the actual medical records. I was confused about the sliding scale comment because if you have the disorder, you just have the disorder. So under the 1Q21.1 microdeletion, there is a class 1 and a class 2. GRB has a class 2, which is a larger deletion. Her medical records confirm this from tests, and it says nothing about a sliding scale. Instead, stating she is within the diagnosable range.
After years of insisting that her mother completely fabricated her medical conditions, she's now admitting to having some of the very illnesses she once denied.
Hello, my name's Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and if you've read my book, My Time to Stand, then you will know that I have a rare genetic condition called microdeletion 1q21.1. What exactly is that? Okay, let's dive into that. So a microdeletion is when a small portion of a chromosome is affected, and in my case, it's region 1q21.1. I was first tested for this condition back in 2012, and then again late last year, just to confirm that the first results were correct. So think of it as a sliding scale. It affects the area between 145.4 and 147.8. So where do I fall on that? Well, I don't fall exactly on that number, and I'll explain. So my results are just a smidge different than the standard scale that we learn about. So I am affected through 145.927 through 147.828. So what does that mean? Okay, next slide. So again, thinking about it as a sliding scale. This is where microdeletion 1q21.1 begins, and this is where it ends. And this is my results. I'm slightly off of the standard here and here. So that small difference makes a big, big difference in my health, my physical appearance, and other health concerns.
So, what's the truth? This revelation directly contradicts what she said in court, where she claimed to be perfectly healthy and accused her mother of making up illnesses to justify unnecessary treatments. But now, by acknowledging these conditions, she's essentially confirming the very medical justifications her mother used for surgeries and medications. This raises a major question. Was everything truly fabricated? Or is there more to the story than we thought? This inconsistency doesn't just muddy the waters, it throws Gypsy's entire narrative into question. Is she backtracking to reconcile with her past, or is this a calculated move to reshape her story?
The hand-drawn scale in her video kind of threw me off because there's an actual scale on the top of the document she was referencing in the background that was cut off. That scale supports this information accurately. Genetic variants present in appearance with a range from unnoticeable to clearly present. Some individuals have a silent version of the condition, where they don't display the distinctive facial features, the short stature, the microcephaly, or the psychological effects like aggressiveness, antisocial behavior, and a predisposition to autism and schizophrenia. GRB claims she only has mild dysmorphic features and microcephaly. Here's a picture of a woman from the UK who has the exact same microdeletion as Gypsy Rose, the 1q21.1. Her caregiver did reach out to me saying she's doing well, but will always require help.
For years, Gypsy Rose Blanchard has painted a harrowing picture of her life under her mother Dee Dee's control, claiming that the countless medical procedures forced upon her were not only unnecessary, but deeply traumatic. Her story became the cornerstone of her defense and the reason the world sympathized with her plight. But in this video, she admits that at least some of them were actually needed, like the test for muscular dystrophy. A test she once condemned as excessive is now, in her own words, necessary to determine whether she had the disorder. That's a major shift, and it raises a crucial question. Were some of the treatments her mother insisted on actually legitimate, despite her twisted motives? But the inconsistencies don't end there. Gypsy has long maintained that her feeding tube was entirely unnecessary, a cruel and invasive symbol of her mother's manipulation. Yet, childhood photos tell a different story. They show a shockingly underweight child, frail and fragile, raising the possibility that she may have actually needed the feeding tube to survive. So, what's the truth? Was Dee Dee's medical obsession entirely built on lies, or is the reality far more complicated than we've been led to believe? These contradictions are sparking heated debates online, with some questioning Gypsy's credibility, while others argue that her trauma has left her with a fractured memory of events. One thing's for sure, this story is far from over, and the twists keep coming. Stick around, because this is one video you'll want to watch all the way to the end.
My mother had claimed that I had these multiple medical issues wrong with me, and I believe that she used the microdeletion as a blueprint for them. Microdeletion 1Q21.1 puts those affected at a greater risk of developing autism. In addition to being at a greater risk for developing autism, these other health concerns may be correlated with this condition, such as seizures, muscular dystrophy, and mild mental delays. Another characteristic of this condition is having mild dysmorphic facial features. So going back to my memoir, I talk about how I believe that my mother was using this condition as a blueprint for some of the health concerns she claimed I had.
So, remember when Gypsy Rose Blanchard made headlines by claiming her teeth removal was completely unnecessary, painting it as yet another example of the abuse she endured?
The fact that dentists did this, not this, but this, without any medical evidence to back up why this was necessary, there's nothing to justify this in my medical records at all. So that was unnecessary.
Well, turns out the receipts say otherwise. According to dental records, her teeth had seriously deteriorated, and extracting them was actually the standard medical move to prevent worse health problems. Now, here's where things get messy. If she misrepresented this, what else might not add up? Because despite her narrative of abuse and mistreatment by Dee Dee, some of the medical care he arranged for her might not have been as sinister as she made it seem. Was he really being malicious, or was there actual medical necessity behind some of his decisions? Let me know what you think in the comments section below, but for now, let's continue on.
First, the link between chemotherapy and her teeth being extracted. Later saying that the chemo is something she never had claimed to have, and never claimed she said that she had.
Yeah, I'm also 32 with dentures. I'm an old lady. My teeth is something that I've always been really insecure about. The hospital gave me free dentures because chemotherapy and treatments like that will rot your teeth.
And here are screenshots of GRB replying in the comments in regards to that clip. Number 1, so you agree, I never said I had chemotherapy. It's hard to call someone an LIAR when it can be shown false when it's on a show. He says, Gypsy, stop. Your exact words on the show were the hospital gave me free dentures because chemotherapy and treatments like that will rot your teeth. You can't spin this.
The contradictions in Gypsy's own words are forcing us to take a closer look at Dee Dee Blanchard's actions. Was she purely a manipulative mastermind, driven by control and personal gain? Or were there moments where she genuinely believed she was doing what was best for her daughter? It's a question that challenges the black and white narrative we've been fed and forces us to confront the uncomfortable gray areas of this tragic tale. There's no denying that Gypsy has a legitimate medical condition, but the extent of Dee Dee's extreme behavior, doctor shopping, exaggerating symptoms, and subjecting Gypsy to unnecessary procedures raises unsettling questions.
However, in 2007, when GRB was 16 years old, she had 13 cavities with 3 extractions required. Then in 2013, at the age of 22, she had severe dental decay, likely due to a high sugar diet and continued utilization of a bottle. This subsequently required oral surgery, which she signed off on as an adult. As just a bonus to this document, it does show that CPS did visit Gypsy Rose, and that also Dee Dee Blanchard never had a power of attorney over GRB.
Was Dee Dee exploiting her daughter's condition for sympathy, financial gain, and attention? Or was she a mother so consumed by fear and misinformation that she lost sight of what was real? Gypsy's attempts to expose her mother's overbearing tendencies have inadvertently revealed the tangled web of her own medical history, leaving the public to wonder, were Dee Dee's motives purely sinister? Or was she a flawed individual struggling to navigate a situation far beyond her understanding?
But how did she say she was diagnosed in 2012, but her mom had been using this all her life for these medical issues? 2012, she was 20, right? She also said muscle dystrophy, she doesn't have it. So that basically says that she doesn't have those issues. But muscle dystrophy is only Irish people get, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have weak muscle tone. Also said she doesn't have epilepsy. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have seizures. Epilepsy is seizures, but seizures isn't necessarily epilepsy. This whole video basically shows, A, her mom didn't have Munchausen by proxy, and she's lied a lot.
But just when you think this story couldn't get any more complex, Gypsy has introduced a shocking new layer to the conversation. In a recent revelation, she shared the possibility that her own child might inherit the same microdeletion chromosome disorder that has defined much of her life. This bombshell shifts the narrative from past trauma to future implications, raising urgent questions about genetics, family history, and the emotional weight of passing down a condition that has shaped her existence. Gypsy has been candid about the reality that she may have passed this disorder to her daughter, adding a deeply personal and heart-wrenching dimension to her story. Alongside her partner, she's now closely monitoring her child for any signs of the condition. As of her latest update, no symptoms have appeared, but the uncertainty looms large. This revelation forces us to confront a haunting question. After years of medical history, how will she handle the possibility of facing the same challenges her mother once did? Will she approach it with the wisdom of someone who's lived through it, or could history, in some way, repeat itself?
Unfortunately, there is a 50% chance that I may pass this genetic condition to my children. Thankfully, we are monitoring Aurora quite diligently, and so far, the geneticist has said that she does not display any of the characteristics of this condition. What does this mean for the possibility of having more children going forward? I really don't like the idea of the possibility of continuing to play Russian roulette with the possibility that my child may end up having this genetic condition. My child can grow up living a perfectly normal life with the condition, or they can display the characteristics and the conditions that are correlated with the genetic condition. And that's just something that I really don't want to play with. That's something that I don't want to leave up to chance, not if I can help it. So most likely we'll have to do something like IVF so we can narrow down and actually select the genes of our future children to make sure they don't have this microdeletion. So with that knowledge that it can be passed down from parent to child, where did I develop it? So my father was tested for this deletion and he did not have it. He came back negative. And unfortunately, we can't test my mother. So two things could have happened. I could have developed it from my mother and she could have passed it down to me, or it could have been a mutation within myself that it developed.
After years of having her medical decisions controlled by her mother, Gypsy is now in the driver's seat of her own life. She's even considering IVF to prevent passing down a hereditary disorder. But here's the twist. While she talks about protecting her future children, her actions as a new mom are telling a different story. One of the biggest bombshells, Gypsy reportedly left her newborn behind just weeks after giving birth to go on a date. Yes, you heard that right. Just a month into motherhood, she stepped out with her boyfriend Ken, citing relationship struggles as her reason. Now, maintaining a healthy relationship is important, but the optics here are messy. Should rekindling a romance really take priority over bonding with a newborn? The internet certainly doesn't think so, and the backlash was swift. Critics were quick to question her priorities, with many wondering if she's truly ready for the responsibilities of motherhood. But wait, it doesn't stop there. In another eyebrow-raising move, Gypsy left her baby again, this time to travel to Los Angeles for her book promotion. Now, let's be clear. Career ambitions are understandable, especially for someone like Gypsy, who's trying to rebuild her life and share her story. But for a mother still in the crucial early weeks of parenthood, the decision felt off.
The first case of this microdeletion was identified in 2008 and is often not detected in routine genetic testing. This made it highly unlikely that Gypsy Blanchard referred to a blueprint to convince doctors that her daughter had this condition. How could Gypsy, with no scientific training or education, have possibly convinced doctors before 2007 that her daughters exhibited symptoms of this condition? The medical community was only beginning to understand this disorder at the time. Dee Dee could not have known what symptoms to exaggerate or fabricate to create the appearance of this condition. Dee Dee Blanchard was struggling, caring for a sickly child with minimal help and unreliable child support. She did not fully understand her daughter's symptoms.
While most new moms are laser focused on their baby's well being, Gypsy seemed more concerned with media appearances and public engagements. Naturally, this has fueled speculation about her priorities and whether she's truly committed to putting her child first. And here's where things get even more complicated. Gypsy has spoken openly about the trauma of growing up under her mother's control, yet some are now wondering if she's making parenting choices that could one day be questioned in the same way. Her desire to use IVF to control genetic outcomes shows she's thinking about the long-term future of her kids. But does that mean much if her present actions don't align with the responsibilities of motherhood? It's a tough question, and one that's sparking heated debates online. Her fans and followers are torn. On one hand, some argue that Gypsy deserves grace as she adjusts to this new chapter. After all, she spent most of her life under the thumb of her mother, and navigating independence, let alone motherhood, is no easy feat. On the other hand, critics believe her actions prove she is more focused on herself than on being a mom. The internet is buzzing with theories, and everyone seems to have an opinion. So, what's the truth? Is Gypsy just a first-time mother figuring things out as she goes? Or are these red flags we shouldn't ignore? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications, because this story is far from over.
Why was it important for Gypsy Rose to stress that her diagnosis was in 2012 rather than 2011? Could it be that she's trying to distance herself from 2011, the first time she took an attempt on her mother's life? In 2011, Dee Dee had confronted GRB about running away with men. An argument ensued. GRB grabbed a GUN off of the table, thinking it was real, and SHOT at her mother 10 times, only knowing it wasn't real when there was no red stuff, and while Dee Dee was still standing.
Is Gypsy Rose Blanchard really the devoted mother she claims to be, or is there a deeper contradiction in her actions? On one hand, she speaks about her love for her daughter and her desire to protect her from the same hardships she endured. On the other, her decision to leave her child behind for personal reasons raises serious questions. The disconnect between her words and actions is impossible to ignore, adding yet another layer to the ongoing debate about her true character. Gypsy's choices become even more complicated when considering her traumatic past. She grew up under the extreme control of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, who subjected her to years of medical deception. Now, as a mother herself, some of her decisions, such as leaving her child behind, come across as neglectful and misplaced, especially when measured against traditional expectations of motherhood. Is she unconsciously repeating the cycle of dysfunction, or is there more to the story? The controversy surrounding Gypsy only intensified when people started comparing her to Casey Anthony. The parallel sparked heated debate, especially since Gypsy herself weighed in on the Casey Anthony case. In an attempt to separate herself from the notorious figure, she took to social media to call Anthony out, pointing out that unlike her, she had served her time. This public stance came across as an effort to frame herself as the more sympathetic figure, but not everyone is buying it. With the internet dissecting every move Gypsy makes, the question remains, are these just the struggles of a woman trying to rebuild her life, or do they reveal something more unsettling? Let's hear it. Do you think Gypsy deserves sympathy, or is the Casey Anthony comparison fair?
Should we be concerned about Gypsy's baby, y'all? Because I have seen on here a video where the Gypsy's stepmom, had told someone that Gypsy reached out to Casey Anthony. And we all know what Casey Anthony did to her child, so why would Gypsy be reaching out to Casey Anthony? I mean, that's a little disturbing. And I'm not trying to put Gypsy down as a mother, but the video I saw her standing in front of the mirror holding the baby in that little thing, she seemed so uncomfortable holding that baby, like, and everyone's saying that she's never with the baby or is detached from it and all this. Maybe she's going through postpartum. I don't know, because I don't know her, I'm not in her life. But I'm just wondering, her reaching out to Casey, that's...
Gypsy Rose Blanchard has worked tirelessly to paint herself as the more sympathetic, loving, and remorseful figure in her harrowing tale of survival and tragedy. But when you hold her case up against Cassie's, a story with eerie parallels yet starkly different outcomes, the cracks in Gypsy's narrative begin to show, and the hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. Gypsy, who famously pleaded guilty to the murder of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, has long claimed that years of relentless abuse and manipulation pushed her to the breaking point. Her defense? She was a victim fighting for her freedom. But let's compare that to Cassie's case. Cassie, who faced similar accusations, didn't take the plea deal. Instead, she stood trial, faced the public's judgment, and was ultimately found not guilty by a jury of her peers. While Cassie risked everything to prove her innocence, Gypsy opted for the safer route, avoiding the courtroom drama altogether by admitting guilt. It begs the question, why did one woman fight to clear her name, while the other chose to sidestep the legal battle? Was Gypsy truly the victim she claims to be, or was her plea a calculated move to control the narrative? The contrast between these two cases is staggering, and it leaves us wondering, who's really telling the full story here? Stick around, because this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Number 2, commenter said she replied and deleted it. She said she never said she got chemotherapy, even though it's literally on the show where she said it. She L-I-E-D. Gypsy responded, re-watch the scene. I never said that I had chemo. I don't know what happened to my other reply, but what I said was my mother told the doctor I had chemo to get free dentures. Please re-watch the scene. Gypsy Rose again. Actually, I never said that. What I said was, people often lose their teeth to chemotherapy. I never said I had chemotherapy, but my mother said I had chemotherapy, and that is, and it cuts off, but you get the point. The point I want to make is that she said she never had chemotherapy and never said she had chemotherapy. We're clear on that. Okay, then what's this? In a TikTok live stream of Gypsy's, shortly after her release, she was asked, Gypsy, did you have chemotherapy? To which she replied, once a week. That is her replying on her own live stream.
Her recent attempts to position herself as morally superior to Casey Anthony, a name synonymous with controversy, have only added fuel to the fire. Gypsy has subtly framed herself as a better mother and a more upright figure, citing her prison time as proof of her accountability. But this comparison is fraught with complications. Both cases are layered with nuance, and Gypsy's suggestion that punishment equals redemption oversimplifies the deeper issues at play.
Gypsy said the crime was 10 years ago. She acted like you should just move on. People change. She changed. Right? But then why doesn't the same logic go for Nick if it was so 10 years ago? He changed, right? Why is Nick still in prison then? If people just move on from a murder they committed 10 years ago, and people can change, why is Nick still in prison? Why are you out? Because if you ask me, he took responsibility for what he did. He took accountability for what he did. He knows he needs to pay a price for what he did, and he accepts that. He's verbalized that many times. So, it looks to me like maybe he changed, and you didn't. And here you are acting like it was yesterday's news. That murder was so 10 years ago. People change. But then that should go for Nick as well. I don't know. Make that make sense. That only applies to you, Gypsy? Okay.
Accountability isn't just about serving time. It's about introspection, growth, and owning the full scope of one's actions. And right now, Gypsy's narrative feels less like a journey of redemption and more like a carefully curated PR campaign. What's even more troubling is the way she continues to shift blame. Gypsy has been vocal about the media's portrayal of her, emphasizing her victimhood and the abuse she endured. But as she speaks out, her story keeps evolving, and the inconsistencies are becoming harder to ignore. One moment, she's a survivor reclaiming her voice. The next, she's deflecting responsibility and painting herself as the sole victim of her circumstances. This back and forth has left many wondering. Is she genuinely seeking closure, or is she strategically managing her image to control the narrative? The more she talks, the more it feels like she's walking a tightrope between truth and calculated storytelling. Public opinion remains sharply divided. On one side, there are those who sympathize deeply with Gypsy's traumatic past, viewing her as a victim who was pushed to the brink. On the other side, skepticism is growing. Her recent videos and interviews, rather than solidifying her redemption arc, have only fueled more questions about her intentions. If her goal is truly to move forward and find peace, why does she keep making statements that feel more like damage control than genuine self-reflection?
Nicholas Godejohn was used. He was thrown away. And even now, while Gypsy Rose is free, he's still paying the ultimate price for her escape. Y'all see Gypsy smiling, holding hands with Ken, doing interviews, and living a whole life. But do you ever stop to think about Nick? About the man who loved her so much, he gave up his entire future to save her. Look, I'm not saying what happened wasn't horrific. It was. But let's be real. Gypsy knew exactly what she was doing. She chose Nick because she knew he would do anything for her. She played on his emotions, she played on his autism, and she played on his loneliness. She convinced him. She manipulated him into believing that murder was the only way they could be together. And now, she's out here getting love and support and a second chance at life. While Nick is spending every single day in a prison cell, forgotten by the world, serving a life sentence without parole. He has never gotten the chance to be a person outside of this moment, outside of this crime. And that's not fair. Gypsy gets a redemption story. Gypsy gets sympathy. Gypsy gets freedom. But Nick gets nothing. He was used. He was thrown away. And nobody even cares. And that should break your heart.
Why does she seem more focused on defending her reputation than grappling with the moral and emotional weight of her actions? The truth is, the road to redemption is far more complicated than simply serving time. It requires a level of introspection and accountability that Gypsy has yet to fully demonstrate. Her insistence on using her prison sentence as the ultimate justification for moving on only underscores the unresolved complexities of her case. If she truly hopes to break free from her past and rebuild her life, she'll need to do more than remind the public that she's done her time. She'll need to confront the full impact of her actions, acknowledge the pain she caused, and show that she's committed to genuine growth.
Gypsy Rose killed somebody too, so she's no better. There's a huge difference between Gypsy and Casey Anthony. Gypsy Rose is a victim who took matters into her own hands, and Casey Anthony is a pathological liar who's never taken responsibility for the death of her daughter. Okay? Gypsy Rose was abused her entire life and had had enough. Casey Anthony wanted to party and pop Xans, so I truly believe that she locked that baby in the trunk while she went to go party, and she came back and that baby was no longer with us. Then I think she took the baby home and put it in the pool until her family could find them. I truly believe that that is what happened that day, and that's what happened to that baby girl. She is irresponsible and a terrible mother, and the reason that little girl is dead is because she just wanted to simply party and live her fucking life. Okay? She quite literally lied the entire fucking time during that court case. She lied so much that she told the cops that she worked at Universal Studios, so they walked around with her for so long trying to find her office that eventually she had to stop and be like, I don't work here, I'm lying. She even made up a coworker named Juliet and came up with all these fucking crazy stories. She's just a fucking liar who has never taken responsibility for the death of her daughter or responsibility for anything in her entire life. Do not follow this woman. Do not give this woman a platform. We kind of hype up Gypsy Rose, but Gypsy Rose, yes, she took the life of her mother, but she has paid her time and she is a victim. There's a huge difference.
Until then, the questions surrounding her story and her credibility will only continue to grow. Make sure to click on the videos you see on the screen for even more shocking details and updates on this case. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. You won't want to miss a single update on this unfolding drama. See you on the next video!